unprecedented numbers of earthquakes and volcanoes. And that is not a hoax, folks. It doesn't pay to make jokes about who is toast. I don't think there is a safe place on the planet. This catastrophe is planet-wide. There are some places that are absolute suicide, and I think coastal regions are those. But I've been ridiculed so much by people who live near the coast or on the coast, and it reminds me of Atlantis. So many people died, I understand, and they just wouldn't listen to reason. It seems like that's what we have today. Next paragraph. From South America came similar prophecies of earth changes. A Brazilian living in Sao Paulo and writing under the pseudonym of Dino Craspedon claimed that the following prophecy, published in England in 1958 in My Contact with Flying Saucers, was given him by a captain of a flying saucer. Like Casey, he predicted the tilting of the Earth's axis, but gave us as a cause a warming of the North Polar ice cap that would redistribute the Earth's waters. Well, the northern polar ice cap has already melted. They're even using it now as a sea lane. And the Russians and everybody in that region of the world are fighting over who owns the Arctic Ocean. I think all parts of the earth belong to all of the people, and I don't like this idea of kings grabbing up all the land they can and causing wars in which we the people die, so that those kings can have more money and more land, more real estate. I don't like kings and royalty. I don't like presidents and puppets. And if you got rid of all the presidents and the puppets, all the fake representatives, all the royalty, the earth would be in much, much better shape, because these people are like a cancer to the planet. When they die, I promise to cry a lot. Next paragraph, quote, "It will be brought home to you by a tremendous earthquake that will shake the earth to its foundations. Cities will fall in ruins and great cracks will appear in the surface of the earth. When this happens, land will emerge from the Pacific and from the North and South Atlantic. The emergence of these new land masses will change the level of the oceans, causing flooding in low-lying countries." In 1950, a celebrated Brazilian medium named Hercílio Maes channeled a similar prophecy from his guide Ramatis, as quoted by Pedro McGregor in Jesus of the Spirits, 1967. Maes predicts that the Earth's axis will change through 90 degrees due to the gravitational pull of an enormous new planet which will enter our solar system soon. Quote, "Entire continents such as Europe will be completely destroyed and vanish forever beneath the new oceans which will form. North and South poles will be totally de-iced, and man will find unimaginable riches to help him form the new humanity of the third millennium." Unquote. Next paragraph. Axis tilting appears in an earlier prophecy from 1922, quoted by Harriet and Homer Curtis, in their Coming World Changes, 1926. They claimed the prophecy was given to them by a mysterious personage who immodestly titled himself King of the World. Quote, "Owing to volcanic activity and a tilting of the axis of the earth, vast and cataclysmic changes were to take place in the comparatively near future, which would entirely remodel and rearrange the land surface of the globe." Unquote. We have 2 paragraphs left. The most famous of the early prophets of earth changes and Atlantis was Madame Helena Blavatsky, Blavatsky. She lived from 1831 to 1891, a medium, mystic, and founder of the Theosophical Society. In her channeled work, The Secret Doctrine, 1887 to 1897, she prophesied. Before I read her prophecy, I have to tell you that I read about her, and most of what she supposedly said is not attributable to her. But let's read it anyway, and you can do your own research to find out if she's your favorite guru. See if she's your favorite prophet. She prophesied, quote, that the periodical sinking and reappearance of mighty continents, now called Atlantean and Lemurian by modern writers, is no fiction and will be demonstrated. It is only in the 20th century that portions, if not the whole, of the present work will be vindicated, end quote. Well, it's a vague prediction at the end, but she mentioned Atlantis and Lemuria and says they periodically sink and reappear. Now, how could that happen? I'll tell you how it could happen. Planet X has an attraction because it has mass. But Planet X is also magnetic. And the Earth has a portion, the Atlantic Rift, which is dense iron. And Zeta Talk says that Planet X will lock on to the Atlantic Rift and the Earth will stop rotating. I presume this happens when Planet X passes through the ecliptic plane and is closest to the Earth. We have 3 days where the Earth stops rotation, and the ancients have said that the sun rose in the west for 4 or 5 days, something like that. So in addition to this magnetic attraction, we have a change in rotation. Maybe the Earth rotates because of the mass of the sun, and there's some reason that causes rotation. I don't know. But when Planet X gets close, the Earth changes its rotation and rotates in the opposite direction, and we have the sun rising in the west for a while, a few days. If Planet X has the magnetic attraction to pull the Atlantic Rift, you could see Atlantis popping out of the ocean and rising up. Now these are plates that float, and when one is pulled up, it might stay there for 4,000 years until the next pole shift, or however often they happen. I'm not talking about pole reversal, where the North Pole becomes the South Pole. I'm talking about a pole shift where you see 90 degrees turn. And I understand now how that can happen. Planet X comes in and does a reversal when it crosses the ecliptic plane because it obeys the big bully, the sun. The sun is much larger than Planet X, and so there's a reversal of the polarity once it passes through the ecliptic plane. When it does that reversal, what was repelling the Earth is now pulling the Earth in. And so the Earth starts moving toward Planet X and the sun. And as Planet X exits the ecliptic plane and moves up above it, it lets go of the Earth. But the Earth has already moved 90 degrees because one of the poles was pulled toward Planet X and the South Pole is now pointed toward the sun. I think that's when all the melting is going to take place. We're 30 million miles closer to the sun. The South Pole is aimed right at the sun, and that heat is going to melt the polar caps. Now, when Planet X releases the Earth, it doesn't reach back and turn the 90-degree turn back the way it was, leaving Earth undisturbed. Earth permanently, 4,000 years, changes its polarity. It begins to spin differently now, and what was the Antarctic and the Arctic are now tropical climates. And we know this happens because elephants were found with tropical plants in their stomach, and they were found in Siberia. Siberia has a lot of oil, probably because it was tropical. I think oil comes from algae, not dead dinosaurs. We know that algae grows all petroleum products you want. And some are right-handed and some are left-handed, and their chirality, that's what it's called, right-handedness and left-handedness is called chirality. Their chirality determines if plants and animals can eat it and use the energy. We can only use dextrose, or right-handed. We can't use the left-handed. They had a product years ago called Olustro or something like that, and they were putting it in food. We couldn't digest it, and so it gave people diarrhea. It was oil, but we couldn't digest it. So if you want to make French fries and you don't want to gain weight, you use Olestra. You eat the French fries, the oil doesn't digest because it's the wrong chirality, and it passes right through. Well, if your body's not absorbing those oils, when they get to the lower intestines, look out. So people had diarrhea, and I think they took it off the market. I'm not sure. So, Planet X pulls on the magnetic parts. Now there's a big part of Mars where a chunk of Earth is gone. I think that land had a high iron content, and Planet X came whizzing by and pulled it out. Scientists don't have an explanation for the big Grand Canyon that's 4,000 miles long. Mars is smaller than the Earth, and that Grand Canyon is 4,000 miles long. It could stretch from Los Angeles to New York, and it's much, much bigger than our Grand Canyon here in Arizona. So everybody forms their own opinions about what happened to cause things. And I say, did scientists admit that the asteroid belt appears to have been a planet that got all busted up? When Planet X comes through, it's got a lot of debris. Some of that debris are mountains, and some could even be bigger, like planets or moons. And if one of them smashed into that planet that used to be between Mars and Jupiter, it could have shattered it, and we have the asteroid belt. Don't believe anything I say. If you want to consider it, that's okay. But I don't think we're going to get any science out of government. If they discover anything, they're going to keep it to themselves. They're not sharing anything. They want us to pay all the bills, but they're not going to give us any of the knowledge. And that's why I don't think we need a government. If Planet X comes whizzing past the Earth, and we have a North Pole and a South Pole, and what determines the North Pole and the South Pole? It's the orbit. If the Earth is spinning, not the orbit, revolution on its axis, the rotation of the Earth causes the molten magma inside to move, and that creates a magnetic field. You have a North Pole and a South Pole, and when Planet X comes by, its North Pole repels our North Pole, and as long as it's far away, we just have a wobbling. But when it gets closer and it passes through the plane of our solar system, all of our planets are located in a ring, like Saturn's rings, Neptune's rings, galaxy rings. The Milky Way galaxy is organized the same way. It's the same physics. They organize in rings, and everything rotates around the large mass. In galaxies, that large mass might be a black hole. We don't know because no light comes out to tell us anything. And so all of our planets go around the sun in a disk, except Pluto, and it's not a planet anymore, so it doesn't matter. It's just a rock out there. It's a planetoid. And Planet X comes in on a weird orbit, too. It is not in the plane of the rest of the planets. And so it comes in under the disk. We say under. There is no up and down in space. The Australians do not live on the bottom half of the world. It's just as correct to say they live on the top of the world instead of the bottom, but the Europeans decided that they were on top a long time ago, and that put Australia on the bottom. But when you have gravity, Europe has gravity and Australia has gravity, so which one is up? Neither. It's another distortion of reality. But let's assume for a minute that the northern hemisphere is up and the southern hemisphere is down. Planet X comes in under the disk. It's called the ecliptic plane. And it passes through the ecliptic plane, and that's when the pole shift takes place. Because when it passes through the plane, its own polarity reverses. And instead of repelling the Earth, it now draws the Earth in. The animation I saw, it repelled Venus, and Venus went flying in a new orbit. And it pulled in the Earth. And then Planet X continued up, and the Earth then was hurled out into space with a new orbit also. But it pulled the Earth in as far as Venus's orbit. And that's 30 million miles closer to the Sun. The normal Earth orbit is 93 million miles from the Sun. And when it gets pulled in 1/3 closer, do you think that's going to cause a warming of the Earth? Of course. We should be a lot warmer all over the planet. We are going to get a new orbit. We might be closer to the Sun. I don't know. Those who do know are using math that we cannot do on this planet, we humans. And our average person is not walking around with an IQ over 200. The Zetas have an IQ of 275. Average. And Einstein was about 180. He looks like a fool. Their average person is almost twice as smart as he is. So they can figure out things that we can't figure out. And we are humans and mammals, and they are not reptilians, but reptilians became very intelligent and fly the galaxies. 80% of all life, according to the Zetas, is reptilian, not mammalian. Only 10% is mammalian, because most planets are warmer. So the reptiles had the advantage. But warm-blooded mammals occasionally, on a cooler planet, will emerge on top. And the Zetas, I understand, are derived from insects, and it's very possible that insects are highly intelligent. And I don't know how many species there are in the galaxies that are insectoid, but I'm pretty sure that there's more than just mammals, reptiles, and insects. I'm sure there are sea creatures that have spaceships full of water, and they have learned how to operate machines and defy gravity and fly the stars. I would like to meet the reptiles and the insects. I'm not sure how we would communicate with those that travel in spaceships filled with water. If it's telepathic, that's cool. How close to us are they? I mean, do they think like we do, or do they see the world entirely differently than we do? It's a surprise that insects would see the world the same way we do. It's surprising to me that they would come upon mathematics and physics. But we have a lot to learn, and the last thing we should do is shoot down spacecraft, because if we meet these people, it's a chance to learn. We need to be very peaceful people so that they want to live next door to us or meet us. They don't want to send in their best scientists and have us kill them. We have a barbaric leadership. They shoot down alien craft because they want to reverse engineer it. Maybe there's a pole shift every 3,600 years for a reason. Maybe that reason is to drown all the bad leaders. This group thinks they're going to beat the pole shift by going underground. And if radon gas poisons them all, or if they find that they just cannot recirculate their own sewage, or that the medications that they're taking are winding up in their water supply,